Fernando Blenquio Cesena got his start in the illegal drug shipping business in the early 1980s, refueling planes for Salvador Covarrubias.
Before all this, I already knew who Chava Covarrubia was, a famous pilot from Ensenada.
After 3 refueling jobs, Blenquio took advantage of an unforeseen opportunity to be Covarrubias' co-pilot on a flight crossing into the United States.
Supposedly, Saúl Filoso Romero was going to be Chava's co-pilot into the United States, but he got cold feet and excused himself, saying he had diarrhea.
That single co-piloting gig paid quite a bit more than fixing motorcycles or using small aircraft to spot tuna off the coast.
I was given $25,000 that time.
One day, Blenquio's father told him that his friend Carlos Vega, the nephew of then President Miguel de la Madrid, wanted to see him in Mexico City. Blenquio said that he went to see Vega at his penthouse office in Mexico City. Vega asked how he was doing, and Blenquio said he was working hard in the fishing industry in Baja California. Vega then handed Blenquio 2 envelopes and said, "Open them." In one, Blenquio found his pilot's license completely restored without any record of the incident in Michoacán. The other envelope contained a job offer with Mexicana de Aviación, then Mexico's largest airline. Blenquio says that he returned the offer letter to the envelope and handed it back to Vega, who said, "What about your license?" "Thank you. I think I'll hold on to it," Blenquio responded. "And the job offer?" asked Vega. "You've already done so much for me, Carlos," Blenquio said. "I'm going to make my own way now." Blenquio says that he and Vega parted on good terms. And with his license restored, Blenquio was ready indeed to make his own way.
Now, being involved with Chava after having crossed with him to the States was when El Trompudo told me I was ready for the major leagues.
El Trompudo was Blenquio's friend in contact with Covarrubias, and the major leagues in the early 1980s meant flying cocaine from Colombia to Mexico.
So I was introduced, and from there, the first Vuelta down south happens as a co-pilot in a King Air 200. I don't recall if it was 200 or 700 kilos they were carrying.
With his international pilot's license restored and his record wiped clean, Blenquio could fly as a co-pilot, earning $50,000 a flight. Once he started flying as a captain, he made $250,000 a flight. There are moments in his interviews when Blenquio says things like,
"And everything was going well."
These moments are particularly interesting to me. I would like to ask Blenquio to describe in detail what those moments were like. What did the drug trafficking industry at that time look like from the inside when everything was running smoothly? But unfortunately, Blenquio does not often pause and delve deeper into the mundane. Instead, he hurries on to the dramatic, which, to be fair, is surely a common and understandable impulse. And thus, in his interviews with Menyo, time and again, Blenquio jumps between events that were certainly dramatic and, one suspects, also quite traumatic for him and others. In January 2021, colleagues at Detective reached out to me about a curious individual they'd been interviewing using a clandestine cell phone from inside a prison in North Carolina. The man claimed to have worked as a pilot, entrepreneur, and air logistics coordinator in the international drug trade for some 30 years. My friends at Detective produced a podcast in Spanish and wanted to know if I'd be interested in working on a sister podcast in English looking into this man and his story. Sure, I said, but I'd need to do my own investigation and see what I can find. Detective invited the legendary Mexican actor Joaquin Cosio to read the English translations of Transportista's quoted interviews with Menyo Larios. My name, apparently, is John Gibler, and this, in a sense, is Transportista. Episode 5, Everything Was Going Well. Blenquio said that he didn't work 40-hour weeks flying cocaine. Rather, he would take, say, 1 drug flight a month. And thus he had plenty of time on his hands. And making $250,000 on each drug flight, he also had money to invest in his own legal businesses, like the motorcycle repair shop and flying for fisheries. These businesses, in turn, could be used to launder drug money. Blenquio also took jobs flying for regional airlines and a salt export company. While working for Aero California, he went to Minnesota to take a DC-9 flight course. He met his first wife on an executive flight he piloted. She was working as an accountant for the company that audited the salt export business. At this time, one of Blenquio's colleagues in the cocaine business, Omar Medina Beltrones, was arrested. Blenquio decided it would be best to leave Baja California for a bit and move to Mexico City. There he went to visit Omar Beltrones at a federal prison located in the northern part of the city known as El Reclusorio Norte. Prisons offer all kinds of business opportunities, mostly for those doing the imprisoning, but also on a much smaller scale for those being imprisoned. Blenquio told Meño that he started running errands for friends in the federal prison system in Mexico City, taking messages from one prison to another. This would lead him to meet someone who would change his life.
Amado Carrillo I met in the big prison in the southern part of Mexico City as a reward for a favor I did for Jaimillo Herrera, his compadre.
Amado Carrillo Fuentes was a drug trafficker known as El Señor de los Cielos, or the Lord of the Skies, due precisely to his then innovative use of aircraft to move large quantities of drugs across borders. When Blenquio met him in prison, Amado Carrillo's power was on the rise.
I do Amado plenty of favors there, in prison. I'm the messenger for many, many things. That's where my friendship with Amado begins.
And with the friendship came work opportunities.
From then on, I even did some jobs for him to Cali, Colombia.
Blenquio describes his aptitude for taking advantage of opportunities he might not have been entirely prepared for, such as when one of Amado Carrillo's partners asked him if he knew how to fly a Cessna 441 Conquest II.
And I ventured to say that I knew how to fly the Conquest, but I didn't. And then I spoke on the phone with my compadre. He was in Mexicali and I was in Ensenada, hanging there for hours on the phone, trying to give me directions on how to operate those turbines. He sent me by fax at the time a bunch of instructions from the Conquest 441 manual. But at the end of the day, after several hours, he says to me, "Look, fucking compadre, everything that says off goes to on. Just don't dump the fuel and go, cabron. You know and you can do it." And so, said and done. I just did it.
Blenquio's oral autobiography is rife with misadventures and brushes with major international figures and events. For instance, he describes getting stuck in war-torn Colombia with 800 kilograms of Amado Carrillo's cocaine.
One of the pumps was damaged, a mechanical fuel pump, with 800 kilos of Amado Carrillo's cocaine on board.
Soon after takeoff, Blenquio realized the fuel pump was damaged. He could not fly to Mexico, but nor could he land. The plane was too heavy, filled as it was with fuel and cocaine. He had to fly in circles over Colombia to burn fuel.
We had to fly around for about 7 hours when we finally landed in the clandestine runway that we dubbed Mr. Benson's runways. And then they told us about the shitstorm.
Esta noche el precandidato liberal Luis Carlos Galán Sarmiento fue víctima de un atentado terrorista cuando presidía una manifestación política en Soacha, aquí muy cerca de Bogotá.
We heard the news that Luis Carlos Galán Sarmiento had been murdered.
Galán Sarmiento was a liberal politician and journalist who promised to extradite drug traffickers to the United States if elected president. He was shot dead on August 18, 1989, in front of 10,000 people as he took the stage at a campaign event. His murder was ordered by Pablo Escobar and, it would come out decades later, members of the Colombian security forces. The murder plunged the country into deeper political strife. Thus, while Colombians spent a night of terror, Blenquio, not entirely unlike Forrest Gump, was flying a load of cocaine in circles over the country when those 10 shots rang out.
It was chaos. The whole country was in shock. We had to hide the plane. I went to Pereira, from Pereira to Palma Seca in Cali. Then we left it there and went into hiding because hotels and homes were being raided. Things got ugly.
After a spell in hiding, Blenquio was able to get back to work.
A month later, things got back on track. I finished the flight, I finished it successfully. Everyone was happy. Amado was happy. I was happy.
Or at least, everyone was happy with the arrival of the Conquest II from Colombia. The 800 kilos, however, ran into a few problems on the next stage of the journey.
It was complete chaos. And the thing is, they took 600 out of 800 kilos. Only 200 made it to the States, and 600 got stuck in Ciudad Cuauhtemoc, Chihuahua. That's when I was forced to flee, so to say, to hide. I lived at the time in Mexico City, El Distrito Federal, and I moved to Los Cabos.
Back in Baja California, Blinquio was busy with both his legal and illegal businesses, collaborating with a colleague, Miguel Bazan.
Let's say that was a relatively peaceful period. When Miguel and I were together, we did several jobs together. Everything went wonderfully well. It was a short period of peace and quiet, enjoying as well several legal flights, so to say, growing my fishing business, my mechanic shop, my aerial taxi company, and everything was going well.
This was sometime in 1992 when Amado Carrillo Fuentes asked him for a favor.
Amado finds me and asks me to assist El Licenciado Baez.
Ernesto Baez Mora, then a club owner in Tijuana and Mexicali, wanted Blinquio to coordinate a large cocaine shipment from Colombia.
And so he explains how the Vuelta's going to happen. And I left for Colombia to coordinate the Vuelta with Don Leonidas Vargas for 5 tons aboard of a DC-6.
A Vuelta is a common term for making a little trip, and Don Leonidas Vargas was then a major Colombian drug trafficker. Vargas was murdered in a hospital bed while in police custody in Spain in 2009. At that time, Blinquio says, logistics coordinators like him were prohibited from making a lot of calls to Colombia. He would need to travel there to set things up. For this particular trip, they chose to land on a hidden improvised runway in the desert near El Vizcaíno, right in the middle of the Baja California Peninsula. It took them months to get things ready.
So we were coordinating everything, fixing up the runway, fixing up the infrastructure. Think about it. A plane like that carries 40,000 liters of fuel.
Once they had everything set up and all the pieces in place, with the plane in Colombia loaded and ready to go, some 5,000 kilometers to the north, the skies over Baja California began to darken.
We were practically ready when one of those unexpected storms came about, and the runways were completely flooded, and we had already postponed since December.
Blinquio wanted to postpone the flight, but
El Licenciado said, no, tell him to take off. So we were confronted with giving orders. He'd given the order. The plane was already practically in midair, and well, we made a tremendous effort to try and dry or fix the runway, which was practically impossible. It was still raining.
The DC-6 pilots couldn't find the painstakingly prepared and then quickly ruined clandestine runway.
Electronic navigation wasn't that common, and on top of that, they didn't have very good communication equipment. We heard some murmurs, but they couldn't find the runway and had to belly land the aircraft in the dunes of La Soledad.
The DC-6, its crew, and the 5 tons of cocaine belonging to Amado Carrillo's friend were lost somewhere out in the desert.
We spent 2 days and nights trying to locate the plane. At least its remains we hoped to find. Unfortunately, the bodies and what was left on the cargo, we couldn't find them.
Next time. Transportista is a Detective production with Exile Content Studio in partnership with iHeartRadio's My Cultura podcast network. Directed and narrated by John Gibler. Transportista's voice by Joaquin Cosillo. Editing and sound design by Fernando de la Rosa and Pedro G. Garcia. Reporting by John Gibler and Menio Larios. Produced by Julio Gonzalez. Voice recording by Hugo Merino and Rene Garcia. Transportistas interviews translated by Carla Ruiz Argaiz. Production supervision by Nando Vila and Alvaro Céspedes. Associate producers Alonso Aguilar and Alejandro Duran. Diego Enrique Osorno is the creator and executive producer along with Daniel Eilenberg and Isaac Lee. Executive producers for iHeartMedia are Connell Byrne and Giselle Bunces. For more podcasts from iHeart, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.